Emma had always been driven by a deep sense of duty. As a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, she spent long hours caring for patients, often sacrificing her own needs to ensure theirs were met. Whether it was comforting a frightened child or staying late to monitor a critical case, Emma believed in doing whatever it took to make a difference. Her co-workers admired her dedication, though they often warned her about burning out. "Emma, you can't keep pushing yourself like this," her best friend and fellow nurse, Lisa, said one evening during a rare break. "You're going to wear yourself thin." "I'll be fine," Emma replied with a tired smile. "It's just, I feel like if I don't give my all, someone might suffer because of it." Lisa sighed, shaking her head. "You're too hard on yourself. No one expects you to save the world single-handedly." But Emma couldn't help it. She had chosen nursing not just as a career but as a calling, to heal, comfort, and protect. Yet lately, the demands of the job had begun to weigh heavily on her. Overworked and underappreciated, she wondered how much longer she could keep going without cracking under the pressure. Little did she know, an unexpected event would soon test her resolve and change her life forever. One crisp autumn afternoon, Emma finally finished her shift at the hospital. Exhausted but relieved to be heading home, she decided to take a shortcut through the nearby park. The air smelled of fallen leaves, and the golden sunlight filtered through the trees, offering a rare moment of peace after a grueling day. As she walked along the path, she noticed a commotion up ahead. A small crowd had gathered around a man lying motionless on the ground. Someone shouted, "Help! He just collapsed." Without hesitation, Emma rushed forward. She knelt beside the man, quickly assessing his condition. His face was pale and he wasn't breathing. "Call 911, she instructed firmly as she began performing CPR. For nearly 45 minutes, Emma worked tirelessly, pumping his chest and administering rescue breaths. Her arms burned with exhaustion, and sweat dripped down her face, but she refused to stop. Each compression felt like a battle against time, a desperate attempt to keep hope alive. Finally, paramedics arrived and took over. They loaded the unconscious man into an ambulance, praising Emma for her efforts. "You did everything right," one of them assured her before speeding away. Emma stood there for a moment, catching her breath and processing what had just happened. Though physically drained, she felt a flicker of pride knowing she'd done her best to save a life. But reality quickly set in. Glancing at her watch, she realized she was already late returning to the hospital to complete her end-of-shift duties. Reluctantly, she hurried back, dreading the consequences that awaited her. When Emma arrived, her supervisor, Mr. Harris, was waiting for her with a stern expression. "Where have you been?" he demanded sharply. "Your shift ended half an hour ago, but your paperwork isn't done, and no one knew where you were." I stopped to help someone in the park," Emma explained, still trying to catch her breath. "A man collapsed. I performed CPR until the paramedics arrived." Mr. Harris crossed his arms, unimpressed. "That's commendable, but it doesn't change the fact that you abandoned your responsibilities here. Hospital policy is clear. Leaving your post without authorization is unacceptable." Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "I understand, but I couldn't just walk away. He needed help." "Regardless," Mr. Harris replied coldly, "you'll need to report to HR tomorrow. This behavior cannot go unchecked." Emma left the hospital that evening feeling defeated. She had saved a life, yet she was being punished for it. Doubts crept into her mind. Was she wrong to prioritize a stranger over her job? Despite the weight of the situation, Emma reminded herself why she became a nurse in the first place. Compassion wasn't something she could turn off. It was part of who she was. Little did she know, her actions would soon lead to unexpected consequences. The next morning, Emma sat in the HR office, her hands clasped tightly together as she waited for the meeting to begin. Her mind raced with questions. Would she lose her job? Was this the cost of doing what was right? When the HR manager and Mr. Harris entered the room, their expressions were grim. "Emma," the HR manager began, shuffling through papers on the desk. "We've reviewed your case, And while we appreciate your intentions, leaving your post without authorization is a violation of hospital policy. We have no choice but to suspend you for 2 weeks without pay." Emma felt as though the floor had dropped out from beneath her. 2 weeks without income meant struggling to cover rent and bills. Things were already tight enough. But worse than the financial strain was the feeling of betrayal. How could an act of kindness be punished so harshly? "I understand," Emma said quietly, fighting back tears. "I'll accept the suspension, but I stand by my decision. I couldn't turn my back on someone who needed help." Mr. Harris avoided meeting her gaze, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. The HR manager nodded curtly. "We'll reassess your status at the end of the suspension period," she added before dismissing Emma. Walking out of the hospital, Emma felt a mix of anger and sadness. She had dedicated years of her life to helping others, only to be penalized for one selfless act. Still, she refused to let bitterness take root. If anything, the experience strengthened her belief in putting people first, even if it came at a personal cost. Back home, Lisa visited later that evening, bringing over dinner and a listening ear. "This is ridiculous," Lisa fumed after hearing the news. "You saved someone's life, Emma. They should be giving you an award, not suspending you." "It doesn't matter," Emma replied softly. "Rules are rules, and I broke them. I just hope the man I helped pulls through." Lisa hugged her tightly. "You're too good for this place sometimes. Don't let this break you. You'll find a way forward." Over the next few days, word spread among Emma's co-workers about what had happened. Many expressed outrage at the hospital's decision, while others quietly admired her courage. Some even stopped by her apartment to offer support, whether it was groceries, small gifts, or simply words of encouragement. One day, a young intern named Mia knocked on Emma's door. "I wanted to thank you," Mia said shyly, handing Emma a handmade card signed by several nurses. "What you did reminded me why I chose this profession, to make a difference. Even if the hospital doesn't see it, we do." Emma accepted the card, touched by the gesture. It wasn't much, but it reminded her that she wasn't alone, that there were still people who valued compassion over bureaucracy. Despite the suspension, Emma continued looking for ways to help others. She volunteered at a local shelter, assisting with health checks for residents. Though unpaid, the work gave her a renewed sense of purpose. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Emma, the man she had saved was slowly regaining consciousness in the hospital. His name was Thomas, and he was a retired architect traveling the country after years of estrangement from his daughter. When he finally woke up, doctors explained that a passerby had performed CPR, saving his life. Thomas was overwhelmed with gratitude. He asked the staff to identify the person responsible, eager to thank them personally. What he didn't realize was that his rescue would lead to a chain reaction, one that would change not only Emma's life but also reconnect him with the family he thought he'd lost forever. A few days after Thomas regained consciousness, his daughter Sarah, the hospital director, received an update on her father's condition. She hadn't spoken to him in years, their relationship strained by past disagreements and misunderstandings. But hearing that he had survived a near-death experience stirred emotions she'd buried long ago. When the attending physician mentioned that a nurse named Emma had saved his life by performing CPR for nearly 45 minutes, Sarah felt a surge of curiosity and gratitude. "I need to meet this nurse," Sarah told the doctor firmly. "Who is she? What department does she work in?" The doctor hesitated, glancing at his notes. "Actually, she doesn't currently work here. She was suspended shortly after the incident." "Suspended?" Sarah repeated, stunned. "For saving my father's life?" "Yes," the doctor replied cautiously. "She left her shift without authorization to assist your father in the park. Hospital policy dictated disciplinary action." Sarah's jaw tightened as anger bubbled inside her. How could the hospital punish someone for such an act of selflessness? Determined to get answers, she requested Emma's file and scheduled a meeting with HR immediately. Later that day, Sarah reviewed Emma's records, learning about her dedication to patients and her history of going above and beyond. Her suspension seemed grossly unfair, a reflection of rigid policies rather than human compassion. Frustrated but resolute, Sarah decided to visit Emma personally. After tracking down her address, she drove to Emma's modest apartment, unsure of how the conversation would unfold. When Emma opened the door, she was surprised to see the hospital director standing there. "Ms. Emma Carter?" Sarah asked gently. "Yes," Emma replied, confused. "Can I help you?" "I'm Sarah Bennett, the director of St. Mary's Hospital," Sarah introduced herself. "May I come in? There's something important I need to discuss with you." Emma stepped aside, still puzzled, as Sarah entered the living room. Once seated, Sarah began speaking, her voice filled with emotion. "First, let me say thank you for saving my father's life. He's doing much better now because of your actions." Emma's eyes widened in shock. "Your father? The man in the park?" "Yes," Sarah confirmed, nodding. "His name is Thomas. We've been estranged for years, but hearing about what happened made me realize how precious life is, and how close I came to losing him forever." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she continued. "When I found out you were suspended for helping him, I was furious. Not only did you risk your career to save a stranger, but you also gave me a second chance with my dad. I'll never be able to repay you for that." Emma shook her head, humbled by Sarah's words. "I didn't do it for recognition or reward. I just couldn't stand by and do nothing." "That's exactly why I admire you," Sarah said earnestly. "You put people first even when it cost you everything. That kind of integrity is rare, and I want to make this right." Sarah went on to explain her plan. First, she would reinstate Emma immediately, overturning the suspension and ensuring there were no penalties on her record. Second, she offered Emma a promotion to lead a new initiative aimed at fostering compassion within the hospital system. "We're creating a program to encourage staff to act with humanity, not just inside these walls but outside them too," Sarah explained. "And I can't think of anyone better suited to spearhead it than you." Emma was overwhelmed, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to say. Thank you." "There's more," Sarah added with a smile. "My father wants to meet you, to thank you himself. Would you be willing to visit him at the hospital?" Emma nodded, touched by the gesture. "Of course. I'd like that very much." The following day, Emma met Thomas in his hospital room. He greeted her warmly, his voice trembling with gratitude. "You saved my life," Thomas said, gripping her hand tightly. "I owe you everything, and if it weren't for you, I might never have reconciled with my daughter." Emma smiled softly. "It's not about owing anyone anything. I'm just glad you're okay, and that you got another chance with your family." As they talked, Emma realized how profound her actions had been, not just for Thomas but for everyone involved. By choosing compassion over rules, she had sparked a chain reaction of healing and connection. With her suspension lifted and her new role secured, Emma threw herself into leading the hospital's compassionate care initiative. The program aimed to recognize and reward acts of kindness both inside and outside the workplace, encouraging staff to prioritize humanity alongside professionalism. Emma worked closely with Sarah to design training sessions, workshops, and community outreach programs that emphasized empathy and selflessness. One of the first changes they implemented was revising hospital policies to allow employees flexibility in responding to emergencies outside their shifts, ensuring no one would face punishment for helping others ever again. The initiative quickly gained traction, inspiring staff members to share stories of kindness they'd witnessed or participated in. For example, a janitor named Mark was celebrated for comforting a frightened child during a long night in the ER, while a receptionist named Carla received recognition for organizing free health screenings in underserved neighborhoods. Emma also introduced compassion corners throughout the hospital, small spaces where patients, families, and staff could leave notes of gratitude or encouragement for one another. These simple gestures fostered a sense of unity and reminded everyone that even small acts of kindness could make a big difference. One afternoon, Emma led a workshop for new interns, sharing her own story as a way to inspire them. "When I saved Thomas," she began, "I didn't think about the consequences. All I knew was that he needed help, and I couldn't walk away. Sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks. But trust me, it's always worth it. The room fell silent as the interns absorbed her words. Many nodded, visibly moved by her honesty and courage. Afterward, Mia, the young intern who had thanked Emma earlier, approached her privately. "Thank you for sharing your story," Mia said softly. "It makes me believe I can stay true to myself, even when things get hard." "That's all any of us can hope for," Emma replied with a warm smile. "Stay compassionate, Mia. That's what will make you a great nurse." As weeks turned into months, the impact of Emma's leadership became undeniable. Patient satisfaction scores soared, staff morale improved, and the hospital earned national recognition for its innovative approach to fostering kindness. Local newspapers featured stories about the program, highlighting how St. Mary's had become a beacon of compassion in healthcare. Sarah watched proudly as Emma thrived, realizing how much her decision to reinstate the nurse had transformed not only Emma's life, but the entire institution. "You've done incredible work," Sarah told Emma one evening as they reviewed feedback from recent workshops. "It's not just me," Emma replied humbly. "Everyone here has embraced the spirit of the initiative. This is a team effort." "Yes, but it started with you," Sarah countered firmly. "Your actions set the tone for everything we've accomplished. Don't underestimate the power of leading by example." Beyond the hospital walls, Emma's influence extended into the broader community. She partnered with local schools to teach students about CPR and first aid, empowering them to act in emergencies. She also collaborated with shelters and food banks to provide medical support for vulnerable populations, ensuring no one fell through the cracks. Through it all, Emma remained grounded, refusing to let accolades inflate her ego. She understood that true success wasn't measured by awards or promotions. It was measured by the positive impact she had on others. One evening, as Emma reflected on her journey, she realized how far she'd come since that fateful day in the park. What had started as a moment of instinctive compassion had blossomed into a movement that touched countless lives, including her own. "I used to think I was alone in this fight," Emma confided in Lisa over coffee one night. "But now I see how many people want to do good. They just need permission to follow their hearts." Lisa smiled, raising her cup in a toast. "And thanks to you, they have that permission. Here's to making the world a little kinder, one act at a time." They clinked their cups together, laughter filling the air. Years passed, and Emma's life transformed in ways she never thought possible. The Compassionate Care Initiative became a cornerstone of St. Mary's Hospital, shaping its culture and earning it a reputation as one of the most empathetic institutions in the country. Patients traveled from afar to receive care there, not just for the medical expertise but for the kindness they experienced at every turn. For Emma, the journey was deeply fulfilling. She had found her purpose, not just in nursing but in inspiring others to embrace compassion as a way of life. Her leadership role allowed her to mentor young nurses like Mia, teaching them not only technical skills but also the importance of empathy and integrity. Sarah, too, underwent a profound transformation. Reconnecting with her father, Thomas, had healed wounds she thought were permanent. Together, they rebuilt their relationship, spending weekends exploring parks, museums, and restaurants, activities they'd missed out on during their years apart. "None of this would have happened without you," Sarah told Emma during a hospital charity gala. "You didn't just save my dad's life, you saved our family." Emma blushed modestly, brushing off the praise. "I just did what anyone else would have done. The rest was up to you too." "That may be true," Sarah replied warmly, "but your example reminded us how precious second chances are. Thank you for that." As time went on, Emma's influence rippled outward, touching lives far beyond the hospital. Former interns and colleagues carried her teachings into their own careers, spreading the message of compassion wherever they went. Some started similar initiatives in other hospitals, while others volunteered in underserved communities, ensuring Emma's legacy continued to grow. Even strangers who had heard about her story were inspired to act selflessly. Local businesses began sponsoring community health events, and neighbors looked out for one another more intentionally. The park where Emma had saved Thomas became a symbol of hope, hosting annual CPR training sessions and kindness festivals organized by Emma herself. One day, while flipping through a magazine, Emma came across an article titled, "The Nurse Who Changed Healthcare." It highlighted her journey, from facing suspension to becoming a national advocate for compassionate care. Tears filled her eyes as she realized the full scope of what had been achieved. Not because of her alone, but because of the collective effort of everyone involved. "This isn't my story," Emma whispered to Lisa, who sat beside her reading the article. "It belongs to everyone who believed in kindness." Lisa grinned, nudging her playfully. "Maybe, but you lit the spark, Emma. Don't forget that." Eventually, Emma retired from her formal role at the hospital, though she remained active in mentoring and community outreach. On her final day, staff members gathered to celebrate her contributions, sharing heartfelt stories of how she had impacted their lives. "You've shown us that compassion isn't weakness, it's strength," said Mia, now a seasoned nurse herself. "Thank you for being our guiding light." Emma hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by gratitude. Looking around the room, she saw faces filled with warmth and admiration, the same faces she'd worked alongside for years. Later that evening, as Emma walked through the park where it all began, she paused to sit on a bench beneath the golden glow of sunset. Closing her eyes, she reflected on her journey, the struggles, triumphs, and unexpected blessings along the way. In saving Thomas's life, she hadn't just changed his fate. She had sparked a chain reaction of healing and connection that transcended boundaries. Because sometimes, an act of kindness isn't just about fixing something broken. It's about repairing trust, hope, and faith in humanity. And in the end, it's not about wealth or fame. It's about the bonds we forge and the legacies we leave behind. If Emma's story inspired you, share it with others. Let us know in the comments. How has kindness or compassion impacted your life? Your stories inspire us to keep creating tales that matter.